Welcome today to this highly anticipated webinar on API security. We are thrilled to have you join us for this crucial discussion on safeguarding your digital assets in an interconnected world. Now, in today's digital landscape, application programming interfaces, that is APIs, have become the lifeblood of modern software and applications. They enable seamless data exchange, facilitate integration, and empower businesses to thrive in the digital transformation age. Now, the catch over here is with the great power comes great responsibilities. API security is now more critical than ever. The growing number of cyber threats and data breaches poses significant risks to your organization's data and reputation as well. So, we are all set for today's webinar where we will explore those challenges as well as the best practices around API security. So, in order to do that, I am today thrilled, excited, and honored to have my guest, Mr. Ayush, co-founder Audesix. Hello, Ayush. Hello, and welcome to this exciting webinar.
Thank you, Swapnil. Great to be here. Great to be with you.
Before proceeding, I think it's better, and I would like you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Sure. Absolutely. So I have recently stepped off a plane where I was speaking at Singapore Tech Week about some of the challenges that AI has posed for cybersecurity experts. Alongside those topics, I was also having a number of conversations about API security, which is probably, in terms of application security, one of the most topical subjects at the moment, right? From the perspective of why I'm here, well, my team make it our mission to ensure that our customers are able to ship their software with zero critical bugs and zero known functional bugs as well. And one of the ways, or one of the key principles behind how we do this, is to make sure that the customers are always, our clients are always self-sufficient. So they're doing as much as they can by themselves, with as high a level of automation as possible, and along the way upskilling their teams to make sure that everyone is being taken along in that journey with them. And I guess from where we're coming from, we're a software company. All the challenges that I'm going to speak to you about today are ones that we have faced or are facing ourselves, and all the tactics, all the theories that I give you are ones that I've already tried within my team, and we've iterated and made sure that they are actually practical and made sure that they actually work before I come on a webinar like this or speak on a podium about some of these playbooks and tactics. Great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, Swapnil. Looking forward to answering some attendee questions along the way as well.
Wonderful. And we are thrilled as well. And I'm sure our audience must also be thrilled to get on this journey of API security. The very first question, Ayush, should we know? First of all, what are the key risks associated with the poorly secured APIs? And how can they affect a company's reputation, first of all?
Yeah, great question to start with. And I think, look, if whether you work in software development or whether you work in the cybersecurity, internal security team within your organization, the risks posed by applications or poor API security are no different to many other cybersecurity risks that you deal with. I mean, ask yourself, why is it that we do security, any type of cybersecurity in the first place, right? It's to help our customers trust us faster. It's to help our customers trust us for longer, right? Now, the big difference with APIs in particular are around the scope of what the APIs enable. Now, let me put it to you this way. If you've got publicly exposed or internet exposed APIs, which your users, your customers use to integrate with their systems or integrate with third-party systems, then that is essentially an open front door. And if you don't secure those APIs properly, it's as good as leaving the front door of your house or the front door of your office wide open for anyone to walk into, right? And if you haven't already heard about this, I strongly encourage everyone to check out OWASP's API Security Top 10. It is the holy grail of, they are the 10 most common risks that you should protect against, guard your APIs against, and secure them against. So check that out. But if you're familiar with application security, then API security is basically a step up from that.
That is absolutely true, Ayush, and thanks for sharing that. Recently, Google published this survey wherein they surveyed around 1,600 odd companies in US and Europe, wherein they published the data, and out of that particular companies, around 50 or 60 odd companies stated that they were being attacked on the API front since the last 2 years. And that is where this API security is coming into picture, and people are getting more into this. But however, I just want to ask you, how can a robust API security strategy, contribute to the business growth and competitiveness?
That's a great question, Swapnil. And just before I get to that, just to follow on from your point, the APIs now are becoming the dominant way that we build our software, right? They are the foundation of many modern software systems, whether they be enterprise grade or even B2C. And if you're when you're going down the microservices path and the serverless path and all these new modern technologies that are coming to the forefront, API security becomes a huge deal when you are trying to adopt these modern technologies. Now, these modern technologies help us ensure that we can build things faster and build things cheaper, but with that comes the need to tailor your security strategy accordingly, right? Now, to your question about how can API security help contribute to business growth, I think what I found in my conversations with security heads, with CIOs, CTOs, VPs of software engineering, is that too many of them are still looking at and still pitching security internally as a cost. And very few of them are actually looking at how differentiating their solution based on its security posture can actually help them sell more, sell faster, sell cheaper. Right? Now, if you look at some of the most successful companies around the world, I'm talking about the likes of Apple, the likes of Google, the likes of even Facebook, if you like. A lot of them have wrongly or rightly, objectively or subjectively, built their brand on security, right? And I think that shows you that security goes hand in hand with, share prices. It goes hand in hand with market cap. It goes hand in hand with making sure that your business growth trajectory is much higher than your competitors. A lot of research houses have proven this. So IBM has done research on what is it that software buyers in particular look at during their purchasing journey. The top two things, both top equal, are: does this software work? Is it buggy, or can it actually do what it's promised to do? And secondly, is my data secured if I use this piece of software, right? Similarly, McKinsey did a study around what do data breaches mean to people? And it found that 48% of consumers will be willing to trust a company that reports a breach quickly. What does that mean? It means that nobody is expecting you not to get breached. Everyone is expecting your company to be breached at some point, even your customers and your users, right? But what you do beforehand to prevent that breach, and how well you explain your actions after the breach is what's going to determine whether you come out looking like a hero or you come out looking being branded a laggard who ignored all the warnings. So what I encourage you to do, whether you're in security or whether you're in the software development function, is next time you go for funding around security solutions or security product, don't just explain the cost, right? Don't just explain, how much time your developers are going to save because this solution allows you to do X, Y, Z. Talk about how this will help your company differentiate itself in the market against your direct competitors by talking about your security posture and what that will mean for your top line, what it will mean for your trust levels, what it will mean for your market cap, right? That is the goal here. That's what we should all be aiming for.
I think you made a very interesting point in here, but what I believe are, by any chance, we hear a lot of supply chain attacks these days, right? So are these any way related to APIs? And if at all they are, what steps do you think business leaders should take into consideration with their current API security posture?
Yeah, great question. Supply chain attacks are probably equally as topical as API security, right? And if you think of any of the big breaches in the last 12 to 18 months, right? Microsoft has had multiple breaches, but think of any of the Microsoft breaches, the SolarWinds breach, the Equifax breach, the Uber breaches, the list is endless, right? Most of these breaches have occurred because of some sort of supply chain attack. Now, what is a supply chain attack? Very quickly, if someone can give me an example or a quick definition of a supply chain attack in the chat, we'll send you out an Audacix t-shirt or a Cyber Chief t-shirt similar to what I'm wearing. So do that and we'll pick the best answer. But with supply chain attacks, they usually occur when you're integrating someone else's software system within your own network or within your own systems, right? And APIs are the most common way of performing these integrations. Now, if you remember what I said about leaving your front door open, if you have enterprise customers who use your APIs, you're storing their data or at least accessing their data or have access to their systems, then if one of your customers is hacked and your APIs are insecure, you're literally leaving that door open for all of your other customers to be breached as well, right? And obviously that's not a stain that anyone wants on their head. And that's why it's important and really your responsibility to make sure that you're securing your APIs from the ground up. Now, the second part of your question, Swapnil, was around security posture and how can people understand the security posture, right? And that is a great question. It's, in fact, one of the questions that we ask many times a day when we do our discovery calls with new customers, right? Which is to say, look, how do you know what your security posture is? And most of the time we get a blank face staring back at us, because typically when it comes to application security and even API security, most companies are going weeks, if not months, without any knowledge of what their current posture is, right? And why does this happen? Because number one, the primary reason is because many companies even now are still relying on an annual or maybe even 6 monthly pen test where a vendor comes in, performs a pen test, gives them a report, and then goes away. And then they still go 6 months or another 11 months without understanding what vulnerabilities exist in their system. But even more than that, the companies that have the in-house tools, a lot of those tools don't give them that information, right? And you'd think that if you've got an in-house tool, you'll be able to click on a button and understand your security posture without too much trouble. To give you an analogy about this, it's like going to a cricket coach and him telling you, oh, yeah, this batsman is a great batsman. And then, Swapnil, you ask him, how do you know that? Do you know his average? What's his average? Oh, he goes, I don't know his average. I just know that he's a very good batsman, right? Or, I've got diabetes, but I last checked my blood pressure, my blood sugar levels 12 months ago, right? So I don't even know if my medicines are working or not, One final one for you, and this one hopefully should hit home. Let's say you get on a plane and the pilot comes on the intercom and he says, Swapnil, I'm pretty confident that we've got enough fuel to get to our destination, but I can't tell because the fuel meter is broken. Are you going to trust him? You're not, right? You're going to jump off that plane quickly, whether you have stairs or no stairs. And that's the same conundrum that a lot of CISOs and a lot of CTOs are facing, right? They simply don't have verifiable stats. Their teams, their vendors are not giving them verifiable stats, and they don't have enough automation to give them the stats about security posture. And that's, in fact, one of the issues that we've tried to solve, or have, in fact, solved with the API security module of our CyberChief platform, where you can literally log on, and the first thing you see is a dashboard that tells you your vulnerability trajectory. It gives you a score out of 7 stars. It tells you where your vulnerabilities are coming from, how long it's taking your team to fix the vulnerabilities. It's right there in front of you, right? And having that information to make data-driven decisions is as important as anything else that we've talked about today.
Wonderful analogy, Ayush. That's. But don't you think APIs are all are to be there to be accessed? That's where the main purpose of APIs are, right? Now, but how can companies balance the need for security simultaneously providing those APIs to their customers and partners, making them accessible? How can they balance it out?
Yeah. Look, again, Swapnil, great question. And I'm gonna shock you a bit here. I'm gonna say, again, this is something we get pretty much on a daily basis. We're being forced by our customers to ship these features early. These APIs need to go out. I don't have time for security, right? It's a common thread that we hear. But in this case, there is no balance, right? There is no place for balance in this equation. If you have insecure APIs, they are worthless to you and they're worthless to your customers. And let me put it to you this way. I'll give you another analogy. McDonald's is a fast food chain, right? Its job is to deliver your burgers and your wraps as quickly as possible. Now, does it work out how to deliver burgers quickly and then works out the health benefits to make sure very few people get sick? Or does it do the fresh produce, the fresh meat first, and then work out how to do it quickly? The latter, right? And similarly, your customers' health, your customers' trust in you, your customers' belief that you value their secure information and will treasure it and protect it, all these things are non-negotiable, right? So if you're late to the API security game, I can understand why you're asking this question. But if you're asking this question, I encourage you to do a mindset shift about where security actually fits into your software development and API security, software development and deployment pipeline, right? And if you're not sure about the security posture of your APIs, any of your endpoints, then I encourage you to pull them from production until you absolutely are. It's as simple as that. Security is never a matter of balance, especially with software security. It's a hygiene factor. Either you have it or you don't.
Thanks for sharing that. I believe our audience must be enjoying these sort of straight to the heart conversations and sharing the lives in reality. And that's where these webinars are all about. These days, particularly in India, if I'm talking about, a lot of compliances are popping out. A lot of customers are coming up with a lot of compliance things and all that. So how can business leaders ensure that their API security strategy specifically is in compliance with relevant data protection regulations, like for the likes of GDPR, CCPA, etc., and all that?
Yeah, great question. And this was one of the many topics I discussed with a lot of CIOs and CTOs on my recent trip to India, in particular because obviously the India Data Protection Bill has just been legislated. And I know we don't have the full workings of it yet, but given our experiences with GDPR and CCPA and the like, we're pretty confident what it's going to mean, right? And what it's going to mean is a complete paradigm shift in how tech leaders within companies look at data security issues. right? Now, one of my team in the chat will post a link to a blog that I wrote a couple of months ago now about what it's going to take for Indian CIOs to be able to comply with anything that the new data protection bill throws at them, right? And I think we identified roughly 11 or 12 different solutions or systems that they'll need in order to make sure that they have enough automation, to make sure they have enough validation, and to make sure that they are in full compliance with these bills, right? Now, your question was around API security in particular, Swapnil. So let me get to that. If we take a look at GDPR and CCPA, both of these frameworks do not prescribe any specific application or API security activity. All right, and we don't see that the Indian bill will do that either. What they do is say that when that each company that complies with these frameworks must have a security structure in place. Okay, and now that's very vague, right? But when you get hauled up against any of these frameworks, if you're found to be in breach and you have to go through the various trials and processes to prove yourself, then they will apply the strictest meaning of security structure possible, right? Obviously. So what I recommend, or what I'm recommending to people, is that the best way to deal with any current frameworks, legislative frameworks like this, and any future ones that will come up, is to shift left as quickly as possible. Now, what do I mean by shift left? Well, shift left is all about making sure that you're building in things like security as early into your software development process as possible. All right. So instead of doing it every 6 months or 12 months, which you might have been doing up until now, you're literally doing it each time you update one of your environments to make sure that you're running those security scans and the security checks as often as possible. Right. So if you're if you don't have anything of that sort in place at the moment, then this is your opportunity to do so. This is your opportunity to get ahead of the curve and make sure that you've got these building blocks in place so that you can take care of those little quirks and the curveballs that any future legislation might throw at you, because they're going to give you some time, but nearly not enough time that you might want or might need to put everything in place. So start now, start early. And if you're not sure where to start from, then I'm sure you'll go to your lawyers and your legal team, but come to people like Swapnil, who can put you in touch with people, with my consultants. We've done this around the world. We've helped people comply with GDPR and CCPA and many other frameworks, including the RBI's cybersecurity guidelines. And we can help you put some of this stuff in place.
That's so true. And Ayush, I as you said, start early and start now is the messaging that you're giving it to the CXOs and those who are really serious enough to employ the API security strategy in place. Now, every organization, I bet, has in place their cybersecurity posture, right? So in tandem with that, how can business leaders align their API security strategies with their cybersecurity posture?
Yeah, good question. And I think the unique thing about API security is that it allows you to almost beat the trend when it comes to cybersecurity. So most cybersecurity, excuse me, most cybersecurity problems, if you hear the experts talking about them, revolve around the fact that there's not enough cybersecurity experts, we're not training enough people, they're too expensive, they're hard to find, all these things come up. With modern application security and modern API security, you have the unique opportunity to actually bypass these constraints, because there are levels of automation in place available to you, which help you complete this bypass. And again, I mentioned shift left earlier, and shift left is this concept of making sure that you're using this automation, you're utilizing this automation throughout your software development process to basically do more security with non-security experts. And in this case, I'm referring to your developers. Now, most developers, even in 2023, have very little idea about security. So how are you going to teach them, to make your application secure? Well, you're going to do that by implementing the right tools and taking advantage of, DevOps principles and CI/CD pipelines to make this automated security activity a non-negotiable part of your software deployment process. And just to clarify this, we often talk to mid to large sort of enterprises who have outsourced a lot of their development, right? And up until now, most of them have been taking their outsourced vendors' words for around security. Yes, is it secure? Yes, sir, it's secure. Okay, I believe you. All right. And unfortunately, you don't have that privilege now. You don't have that that headroom to take someone's word for it. But the advantage is, if you're using tools like CyberChief and other security automation tools, then you can actually conduct those security validations, those security checks, and you can actually give that data to your vendors or to your internal teams and say, look, these are the problems. This is how to fix it. And guess what? I didn't have to use a single cybersecurity expert to take me through that journey.
But again, you said you talked a lot of things around automation, but is it really the fact that security can be automated? Is it? I mean, I'm curious to know about this one.
It's a great question, Swapnil, and you're not the first one to ask this, right? If I had a dollar for the number of times every day I ask this question, I will be a lot richer than I am right now. But the point is that with security, particularly application security and API security, we're at a stage now with AI where I think roughly 55 to 60% of security validations and security checks can be reliably automated. All right. Now, one of the big problems with this is that the people who don't believe what I'm telling you are usually using older tools, brand name tools, but older tools that are built for cybersecurity experts, and they're putting them in the hands of software developers or QA testers who have little security experience and skills and accreditations, right? And what happens? It's like if you put your driver who drives you to work every morning, if you put him in the cockpit of a plane, what is he going to do? Right? He's going to flick some switches, some engine is going to turn on, the plane's going to turn this way, that way. No, you don't know, right? And that's the same thing that happens when you give a traditional security tool to a software developer and go, okay, run with it and use it. All right. And that's why automation absolutely works, but it needs to be the right tool for the right purpose, used by the right person, and then you get the results that we've been talking about today.
On that very note, Ayush, what do you suggest? I mean, what would be the best practices for the mitigation? And if at all you have to come down or jot down certain best practices for the those who are using API security tools or those who want to use it, how should they approach these things? Can you shed some light on this one?
100%. You have a decision to make, right? You can do this the old-fashioned way, which is manually, which means you go check out the OWASP cheat sheets, you go check out the OWASP API Security Top 10, and then in your Scrum meetings, in your software design reviews, and obviously in your code reviews, you are ticking off a lot of those boxes to make sure that you have those various controls built into your APIs into your application, right? That's one way of doing it. The second way, which is probably the more preferable way for most people on this call tonight, is that you get an end-to-end API security tool, which allows you to automatically catalog all your API endpoints, right? Without anyone having to lift a finger. Allows you to generate the API, Open API or Swagger configuration files. Sends that for scanning so that your team can understand what needs to be fixed. And more to follow on from that, not only gives you the vulnerabilities, but teaches your team how to fix those vulnerabilities as and when they need it. right? And in a nutshell, when your users go down this rabbit hole of API security, what they will hear a lot about is a term called shadow APIs, right? And what shadow APIs are basically endpoints that have been built by your developers for testing purposes, for trial and error purposes, but they've forgotten to take them out and they've made it now to production. Now, if those shadow APIs are not secured, or if you don't know about them, then that's a big problem, right? That brings about all those issues that we discussed earlier. So getting an end-to-end automated security tool like CyberChief, or CyberChief's Bolt module in particular, will help you defeat or help you overcome a lot of these obstacles and take care of all these issues like like shadow APIs. You hit the nail on the head before, Swapnil. You said I'm a big fan of automation. I absolutely am. Number one, we do it in our own team. I know it works. Number two, do you ever remember the time where you sat an exam and you just wished that you had a little more time to read and to go over your notes, right? You sat there wishing, oh, I wish I hadn't gone out to eat, or I hadn't gone out to that party, or I hadn't talked on the phone all night. I wish I just read my notes for a bit longer, right? And what these automation tools are giving you, particularly in an API context, is basically giving you that time back, right? So that you don't have to wish that you had more time when things go bad, right? Because you've done all the groundwork early on. Does that make sense?
It does actually, Ayush, and thanks for shedding light on that. However, today market is flooded with a lot of tools. Simple. Now, if I am a CXO and I have to, I have to incorporate or start implementing any API security solutions into my organizations, what are the considerations do you think I should keep in mind as a leader before selecting any API tool?
Yeah, okay. Great question. I think ease of use is the first one. Okay. API security solutions, particularly if you're going end-to-end, are going to be used by your developer team. So make sure that whatever solution you choose is easy to use, doesn't require too much learning, doesn't require practice, and a lot of skills to use. It can literally be plug and play. Now, one big example of this is integration time. The tool that you choose, is it going to take weeks to integrate, or is it going to take minutes to integrate, right? And that's one of the things that we're really proud of with CyberChief. It literally takes 3 or 4 minutes to integrate that with your application or with your cloud platform to start that end-to-end API security piece. Now, if you're the tool that you choose must absolutely give you your security posture in one glance, right? If it doesn't, then it's pretty much worthless. And it must also allow you to download reports, which you can share within your teams or within with your customers when they ask you for reports, so that you're not having to do these reports manually. You're not having to cobble together data from different systems to put these reports together, because all of these things lead to a lot of wastage of time. And if you're having to put people in charge of running a tool or managing a tool, then that tool is not really helping you fix any structural problems. For example, a lack of security expertise or the inability to hire enough security people quickly enough, right? So look at these 5 or 6 things: ease of use, integration time, who is it helping, does it tell you security posture, and can it help you with reporting?
Well, that's pretty straightforward, I would say, and pretty clear about this one. However, Ayush, these days, a lot of developers, a lot of tooling or coding is happening with AI-based tools, right? So my question would be how these AI tools are impacting the security posture of the APIs as well. I mean, how is it impacting? Is it like a bane or a curse, or how is it boon or a curse? How will you make of it?
So you're talking about the API, just the AI capabilities that developers use to build their software?
Yeah, I'm talking about that. And what impact is it having on the API posture, security postures, and all that?
Yeah, great question. Look, the jury is out, right? At the moment, only the very progressive developers are using these generative AI capabilities to write code. And you'll probably hear and see as many examples of these Gen AI systems providing well-structured, secure code as the number of stories you'll hear about these Gen AI systems providing insecure code, right? And at the end of the day, it's not just about the lines of code that you write, right? It's about how these endpoints are put together, how they interact with other parts of your solution. And even though all your lines of code might be secure, the way that you put them together can still lead to very critical or high-risk vulnerabilities, right? So, Gen AI is great for helping your developers potentially solve problems faster. And if you're speeding up your pace of development, that means you're releasing new features faster, you're solving your customers' problems faster. Well, that just means that you need more automation when it comes to security, because your security structure needs to keep up with your pace of development, right? And you weren't wrong before, Swapnil. The main thread among all this API security conversation is automation, because it works, it exists, it's there now. The question is, are your users going to jump on the bandwagon and call up your salespeople and go, I want to see this tool in action? Or are they going to say, oh, no, give me a couple more years, I'll think about it?
That's absolutely true, Ayush. And on the very same note, you have been in this industry for so long. You've been working, you're developing those products around those key pain points these days security people are having around the API security. So can you share some success stories of companies that have strengthened their API security and reaped the benefits out of it?
Yeah, 100%. We work with two main segments. Our first segment consists of your software companies, your SaaS companies that are going from basically your unicorns, right? So pre-unicorn to unicorn stage. Now, these companies are raising hundreds of millions of dollars at any given point in time. Each time they raise money, their investors ask them a lot of questions. Obviously, each sales conversation they have, their customers ask them a lot of questions. And every time they raise money and it's published, the level of attacks they see goes up. All right? Now, we're talking about companies like CleverTac, Rudderstack, VisiQuate, right? These companies have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Their APIs are processing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, right? And if you can understand the scale of this exercise, if they didn't have an end-to-end API security tool in place, or security solution in place, then managing all their thousands of endpoints, managing their teams of hundreds of developers that are spread around the world would become impossible, right? So that's one aspect of it. That's a whole new scale. And a lot of your enterprise customers will say, look, we don't do thousands of transactions every second, right? But they have the same constraints. They might have internal software teams, they might have outsourced software teams, and they still need a mechanism to be able to ensure API security without having to put new staff or existing cybersecurity experts onto the case, right? And so the success story really comes from being able to do more with your existing team. And pretty much all of our customers who have integrated CyberChief's Bolt API security module into their applications are seeing a big decrease in their vulnerability patching time. So to give you an example, the industry average for vulnerability patching is around 12 weeks, so almost 3 months. With our top customers, that comes down to between 3 to 5 weeks, right, after a pen test. And that's because they are doing regular security activities along the way, so that when they do a much deeper dive during a pen test, number one, there's not as many things found. And number two, a lot of those building blocks of security are already in place, so they can patch a lot faster, right? And if you're saving 60% of developer time, then that's a win-win for all, no?
I think that absolutely is true, and thank you for sharing that success story, because I'm sure our audience will love it. They'll start exploring it, they'll start thinking on it. On that particular note, I think it's better now we should take some questions from the audiences as well. I'm pretty sure they definitely will have, some tricky to throw at you, and get some answers quickly. So I think those who want to really ask questions, please raise your hand in there. I will open up and unmute you to ask the questions.
By the way, no one answered my my supply chain attack question. So someone missed out on the Cyber Chief T-shirt. I'm so sad. Maybe Swapnil will send you one instead because no one else got one.
Yes. Let's see what's the questions coming up.
So Swapnil, while we wait for the questions, let me ask you something. So in terms of the discussions that your team is having with your customer base and your prospects, what are the sort of what is the recognition of API security in the market at the moment?
I think based on the stats which I have with the salespeople, it is somewhere people have started at least recognizing that this particular portion in terms of security needs to be addressed as quickly as possible these days now, because nowadays a lot of retail customers into BFSI insurance, they are coming up with a lot of new features day in and day out. They are throwing a lot of APIs to with the customers, in order to reap the benefits of growing businesses. Even the customers are loving the fact that accessing the info with the web application or with the mobile application seems to be pretty decent. That's where these particular players are ramping their efforts, recognizing the fact that these needs to be addressed, and also for the fact that they are not just checking out single tool, they are checking out multiple tools around this one, and then they are trying to figure out which one fits best for their use case at least.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're seeing, excuse me, in our conversations, obviously in India and also around the world. Now there's a growing recognition of the issue, right?
Yeah,
I think we have our first question from Chetan.
Yeah. I think, are you able to read it, or should I? Okay, the question is,
Chetan asks, what care should one take to make APIs robust while using open source pieces of code? Great question, Chetan. Now, it actually doesn't matter whether you're using open source code or building custom code or writing custom code to build your endpoints. At the end of the day, we suggest that as part of any good software development process, you need 5 things. We call them the 5 fists of DevSecOps. Fists as in boxes, fists. And those are basically your defenses, right? So you need your WAF, your web application firewall, which I think is quite well known. You need static code scanning. You need dynamic code scanning for your application. You need API security tool for your API endpoints. And you need also CSPM, cloud security posture management, to make sure that your API gateways and your cloud platforms are secured properly. So the good thing with if you're using well-known, if you're using popular open source frameworks, then the good thing is that they've often already been vetted for at least static vulnerabilities, static code vulnerabilities before you integrate them into your solution, right? So that one layer of validation has already been done for you. The next thing that is important for you to do is to make sure that there are no extra vulnerabilities being born out of how you've integrated that into your solution, right? So if you use those 5 fists, then you're in a good spot.
Wonderful. I think there's also one more question thrown at you. What level of support and training do you provide to users, for effectively utilizing the CyberChief? And CyberChief is one of your products, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great question. So there's two aspects to this, right? So with CyberChief, what we say is that when you give it to your development teams, and it's built for development teams, not security teams, right? So with CyberChief, when you give it to your developers and your QA people, it actually provides them what we call on-the-job coaching. So whenever a vulnerability is identified, it gives them the fix, including code snippets where possible, right? And on top of that, for various teams that need it, your developers can even reach out to our application and API security experts to ask very specific questions and have those questions answered on a vulnerability by vulnerability basis. So in terms of the support and training required, also provided, I think it's almost unprecedented in terms of what other tools are offering. But most importantly, it's provided to you to your developers in a very timely manner. And from a cost perspective, it's designed to make sure that you don't have to invest in those expensive training programs where people go away for 2 days at a time and then come back and forget 90% of what they've learned and only remember the 10% and then forget to implement it.
Wonderful. We also have one more question by Vivek. He says, he's asking, in a large application, what will you recommend to automate the discovery of zombie and shadow APIs?
A great question, Vivek. I mean, the only way to do this is through automatic API discovery, right? And automated API discovery is part of every good end-to-end API security solution. And what it does is you implement a small piece of code either in your applications or in your infrastructure, and every endpoint which is called in your environment then gets picked up, cataloged, and displayed to you, and obviously scanned, and all those validations are done on that endpoint as well. But you become aware of every endpoint in your environment, and then you can choose to do with it what you want, right? So with most good security solutions, they will update you when new endpoints are found. You can categorize those endpoints. You can create different profiles from those endpoints to help your team understand which are legitimate and which might be shadow. And most importantly, the tools should give you some way of visualizing where a lot of these shadow APIs or zombie API endpoints are coming from. And that will help you understand where you need to focus on, which teams you might need to focus on, or which parts of your application you might need to focus on to ensure that the prevalence of these shadow APIs is minimized in the future.
I hope that questions were answered. If at all those are not, please put forward that in the chat. Sonal again is asking, are there any tools that can check vulnerabilities like broken object property level authorization or broken object level authorization automatically?
No tool does it reliably. That's a short answer, okay? And the reason for this is that most automated tools do not understand your application's workflows, okay? And that's why I said earlier, when it comes to application security, API security automation, around 55 to 60% of your use cases are covered, of your security use cases are covered, right? The rest 40 odd percent need to be covered during a manual in-depth pen test. Now, then the next question you'll ask me is, if I'm only covering 55 to 60%, then why do I need automation in the first place? Well, by putting in place automation, you're actually giving your pen testers a lot more time to focus on that, broken object level authorization type of vulnerabilities, the workflow related vulnerabilities, which otherwise they may not have had time for if they were to do the whole part from scratch. Does that make sense?
I hope it should. And if at all those questions are unanswered, please feel free, to put it in the chat box, or else, you can mail us at contact@fineshift.com, or else you can directly mail to Ayush as well, because he's available on LinkedIn or directly accessible as well.
100%. That's actually a great question, Sonal. In fact, let me give you an anecdote. We were having a chat with the CISO of a very large B2C company yesterday. Everyone on this call has heard about this company. It's a multinational company. It's Indian based. And he said to us, does your tool do this? And we said, No, not yet. This is one of our R&D projects that's going on, and we hope to deliver it in the next couple of quarters. And he said, we've done some internal scripting. And I asked him, so how often do you use these internal automations that you've done to find these type of vulnerabilities? He goes, look, we started it and we left it because of resource constraints. So it's not actually being used a lot, right? And that's the thing. A lot of security is good ideas which get parked because you don't have enough bandwidth across your security teams, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where even if you're covering 50 to 60% of their work, you're giving them a lot of breathing space and you're giving them a lot of room to focus on the really critical stuff that can't be automated.
I hope that answers all his questions. I believe that's it for now. If there are more questions, we will let us know. We'll definitely come up with certain other topic around API security once again to answer all of your questions again. I believe Ayush, thank you. Just let me check if there is another question. All right, Sonal says thank you. It makes sense. Thanks for the feedback again. On a closing note, I think thank you so much, Ayush, for answering a lot of the questions around API security. I'm sure this pretty much 40 minutes are not enough to answer the ocean which is there, which is still unanswered. People are exploring. CXOs are still in dilemma whether to go it or not. How mature their API security strategy should be. Still the handholding is being made, and that's where I believe. The products like yours, the companies like us come into picture. They handhold these guys, take them to a level, and they'll help them understand what exactly, where exactly, and how maturely they should implement those strategies in place. Thank you so much, and you were absolutely damn correct on certain all of the questions, in fact. And I hope the audiences must have loved, and thank you for answering their questions as well.
Absolute pleasure, Swapna. Looking forward to doing this again with you soon.
Thank you so much. Loved it. Looking forward.
Take care, folks. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you.